Under James Madison, the fourth President of the United States, John Quincy Adams was appointed the first U.S. American to serve in Russia. He did not consult Louisa about taking this appointment, and she was not happy at all about it. She didn't want to go to Russia, it was too cold, it was a very dangerous journey to get there, and she just didn't want to do it. And what made her even more upset was that he decided that they would go and their two sons would remain behind in America. She never really forgave herself, or to a degree, her husband, for making this decision because she felt that they let their sons down by not being there for them. While they were in Russia, she gave birth to their daughter, who was the first American to be born in Russia. Sadly, that was the daughter who died. Because of not having that much money, Louisa Adams wasn't able to have the lavish gowns which were required for the Russian court, so she often would make excuses either because of being ill or because of mourning that she wasn't able to come to court. But when she did, she was a big reason why her husband was successful at the Russian court. She charmed everyone. She was the hit of the court, and they actually ended up enjoying it more than she thought, even though she frequently asked to return to America. She did enjoy the court life to a degree, and there's a portrait of her from their time in Russia where she's wearing a beautiful red gown and a lot of jewelry, and she looks like some kind of a Russian princess there. She was a very attractive lady with beautiful dark hair and very delicate features. Back in the United States, eventually it was time for John Quincy Adams to take his turn in the White House. Much like her predecessor, Abigail Adams, she did not find particularly charming. Abigail Adams was the first First Lady to live in the White House, albeit only for a few months because it was just being completed. And still, 4 presidencies later, all those years later, it still wasn't really complete. The East Wing still hadn't been fully decorated. The windows with the wind would rattle so much it shook the whole house. It was just nerve-wracking. It was cold, it was drafty, they hadn't worked out a lot of the plumbing. It wasn't a great place to live, and she sort of sarcastically referred to it as the Great Palace. Obviously, as having been raised in Europe, she had seen culture that was far less primitive. We look back now and think that everybody had wooden teeth and used the outhouse back then, but that wasn't the case. There had been thousands of years to develop civilization, and even in America at that time, there was a lot of technology. But Washington, D.C. wasn't one of the most developed cities. It was a newer city, it was surrounded by all these swamps, and it was a figurehead, a good idea, but it took them a long time to really make it a comfortable abode. One of the greatest challenges for her during her time as the First Lady was some of the behavior of her sons. Both her sons became romantically involved with one of the maids in the White House, and then one of their cousins came, and even though she was engaged, she started being romantically involved with one of the sons. And again, this harkens back to Louisa, those years that they weren't there taking care of them. She felt that the sons sort of ran amok because of that. And They definitely didn't exactly follow in John Quincy Adams' footsteps as being really involved in politics in a serious way. But one of their sons does hold the distinction of being the only son of a president to get married in the White House. During her time as First Lady, she wasn't as involved as being a hostess as some other First Ladies has been. She was very distressed by a lot of the conditions, particularly how people didn't support her husband. But like Abigail Adams, who eventually did become her friend, they became good friends later on, but she took her example of using the power of press to try to help her husband. She wrote letters, sometimes under other names, to editors to help him with his policies, and she did give him advice, a lot of which he eventually took. She influenced him on some of his ideas about being against slavery and giving more rights to women, because she was a woman who believed in political ideals, although she wasn't a huge fan of being in the White House and being the First Lady. In her defense, most of the First Ladies didn't enjoy it. Most of the early presidents didn't enjoy it. There wasn't that political ambition, which we see later. Some of the early presidents had it, but in their personal writings, you see over and over again what a great chore it was, how great a strain it put on their finances, on their families, on their personal relationships. People were against them all the time, criticizing them, attacking them. It wasn't a comfortable position, but they did it because they knew it had to be done. It was a position of honor, even if it was very difficult. As she was less involved in some of the events as the First Lady, she withdrew to her writing. She enjoyed writing a great deal, and she wrote her memoirs under the name Adventures of a Nobody.